Good afternoon. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Listen, my name is Tumi Tladi, and welcome to this new series. Well, it's not a new series, I'm in the middle of it. It's a mini series on the web API, particularly ASP.NET Web API. We are focusing on both .NET Framework and .NET Core. And this is the roadmap that all these videos that are marked down, that means we have completed them. So if you can just kindly watch these previous videos, that will be pretty much helpful. So we are on video number 6, which is feedbacks. So this is what you're going to be doing today. And previously we did cover this feature called access pin. It was a fun one where Visual Studio wasn't unresponsive, it was just a blissful. So I'm hoping that the same experience will be, for this video. Okay, so we're going to focus on feedbacks feature. Unfortunately, I cannot show a sample on mobile application. It's currently on my phone installed, but I cannot mirror my mobile app with my computer because of my computer is a bit weak when it comes to graphics and stuff. But on my laptop, it's running seamlessly and beautifully. With that being said, I'm going to create a major series after this one called the Xamarin Station for that one. So let's quickly go to Visual Studio because I was doing some work and then I had to build my projects, of which both of them they have succeeded. And then so far I was still busy with the V3 system, particularly on the services. Okay, and that's what I've added the last time I worked. We're just gonna hit commit all so we can get down to the business of today. So I have 47 outgoing commits. I have a series on version control. If you can just kindly watch the entire series on version control, you'll find that very much helpful. Okay, so now feedbacks. Let's see. So everything is clear. Let me just destroy this guy. Let me close this, close V3, close V1. Okay, so I'm not gonna start with .NET Core. I'm gonna start with .NET Framework, just to remind you that this is 2-in-1 project: ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Web API. So we're gonna start with this guy. So I just wanna open everything that has to do with the feedbacks. So controllers, Web API, version 3, general folder. Wait, why am I looking at V3? Wait. We're not gonna focus on V3 because it's not yet tested, but I'm gonna focus on V1. So general feedbacks V1. Okay, let's wait for Visual Studio to wake up. Okay, seems like it's awoke right now. And I'm just gonna, we'll come back to this. So we're gonna focus on this class called application DB context. So we need that class. It's on DAL, identity application DB context class, and then we're gonna need an entity data model class, which is feedbacks. We'll talk about this. Let's close the DAL project. And then let's pin the controller, and then the next thing that we need is the route, API routes V1. So let's close these guys. We're gonna go to contract, web API V1, API routes V1. And then the next thing that we need, it's gonna be, let's see, this request. So we're gonna go to requests, general, and you see that this is a post one. I'm wondering why is this marked like this. I need to check what's happening here. Okay, so post one feedback request for V1. Okay, do we need anything else? Let's get inside the body of the, we're gonna need something from the automapper. So let's go to automapper, web API V1, general feedbacks V1 profile. Is there anything else that we need? Let's see. There's absolutely nothing else. Okay, before we do this, let me fire Firefox so we can see that from the admin outside, right? So basically the client doesn't interact with the feedbacks, but the customer of those clients, which is my clients, can interact on the Xamarin mobile application, interact with the feedback system as a functionality or the main feature, one of the main features. So as the administrator, I get to interact with the feedbacks functionality. So the idea is that this gentleman is my client. This gentleman is a customer or visitor for this guy. So he can only write a feedback or look at other feedbacks that other customers or visitors have, written through the Xamarin app. So now this guy, he doesn't interact with the feedback system on the web application, but only the administrator can interact with that. And then I'm gonna assign as a new admin, log in. So now as administrator, I am authenticated. So I'm gonna go straight to the tasks. And then I'm gonna go to feedbacks. So we're not focusing on the MVC portion or the portal for administrator, but I just wanna show you the data. Okay, so here we get to see all the feedbacks on the system, all of them. So how many are in total? 15. Let me just, okay, there are 15 in total, right? Now, all of these things are very, very important. All of these are very, very important because data, it's coming directly from this class called the feedbacks, and I want to talk about this class. This class is what creates the actual table called the feedbacks. So this data is coming from that table called feedbacks through this class because I'm using entity framework. So obviously I have a feedback ID as a primary key. Every property is required for security purposes. I have the title, I have the message, I have the rating of type integer, I have when was it created on, I have a boolean flag whether we need to show it for public or not, I have who wrote the feedback, and then I do some initialization of the default value such as feedback ID for go it, new go it, create on, the current date time, show public, which is false. So this guy, it's now automatically mapped to application DB context class, the guy that's responsible to talking to a database. So this is what we create as an actual table in a database. So this guy, we're going to see more of a feedbacks. So why was it necessary? So that we can start with the first line, which is this one. Okay, so do we need to reference this guy? Okay, so the title, these are title. When you see testing, because I'm testing J2, it's not meant to be shown in public, but if I change this flag to be true, and then whoever has my app right now will get to see J and the message. This is me testing, okay? But the ones that you see as show public with the flag true, definitely they are on the mobile application. Okay, so let's start. We know that this is object being instantiated, application DB context. We need this guy to talk to that feedbacks table. And then when it comes to endpoints, because every class, anything I do, there is a comment that can guide you right now. So these were my endpoints. I only have one endpoint. Actually, I have two endpoints. So let me close this guy. I have two endpoints. Yes. So now the first one, these comments are for Swagger to help for documentation, and then we might identify some issues. So the first endpoint, it gets all approved. That's the keyword, approved feedbacks from the system. Now the way you need to craft your endpoint, it should be according to the specification requirement. The document that says we want to show some of the feedbacks to the rest of the world. Some of them we want to only be internally or to a certain group of people. So those are requirements, specific requirements. So Now, if that is okay, we're going to return 200 where we get all of the approved, right? But if we couldn't find it, we're going to return 44 where it says it notifies that no approved. You see, there may be feedbacks on the system, but with the condition that they should be approved. So no approved feedbacks were found on the system to show results. And then we spoke about this attribute HTTP get. It's part of the video that we did on HTTP verbs and methods. Please watch this video. And then we also spoke about the route, which is the route attribute that takes in this route. It's a custom route. We spoke about the response type and then the contract. So we're going to now go to API route v1 class. Here it is, where we need to focus on static class, which is a feedback static class. The first route is going to be get all feedbacks with the base and the version number, and then there's the actual route for the endpoint. All right, then that's what we see on line number 69. Well, sorry, line number 34. And the name of the endpoint is to get all feedbacks. Now it's public, it needs to be exposed publicly, and then it's asynchronous. Okay, so when we get inside, we have this guy. Like I said, if we are dealing with the list, or before I get there, line 34, this is a return type of 200, where if everything is well, we're going to return a list of this response as a list. Now, like I said, the flaw in the system is that I still need to figure out what is the response type for 404. I still need to figure that thing out because I realize that this is a flaw in my system and I like to keep things being consistent. Okay, so now we have a new class that gets into it, that is introduced, which is get all. You see, get, but not one, all feedbacks response version 1, and we have, do we have one? So let's go and look at contracts. This is the request. We need the response general. There we go. Get one. Now, a very interesting thing about this response and request when it comes to contracts in Web API environment is that it's like an MVC. But notice something here. There is a property that's missing when we are showing data to the client. In this case, we're talking about this Xamarin mobile application, also desktop, which is the WPF. It's utilizing this system. Okay, so the web API is able to feed the data to the WPF as a desktop application, Xamarin as a mobile application, but we're not showing if this feedback is public or not, meaning that we're not exposing the property, which is very important. We're exposing title, the message, the rating, when was it created on, and then who wrote the feedback. Like I said, I can only use my laptop when I get to Xamarin series to show the actual system in production, not the demo, the one that's from Google Play Store. Stay tuned for that one. So this is the response for all of them, right? And that's what we see here as a list. And then what we need to do, line 37, we instantiated that list to say, listen, this is what we're gonna be returning eventually. And what we do, we then introduce automapper for feedbacks. All right, so this is what we have. Now this guy, like I said, every class, that's gonna make use of automapper. It's a best practice and recommended approach to append profile in the class name because it inherits directly from profile, and we only need the constructor, and we're creating two maps. The first one, we are taking data from the database, from this table entity data model, to get our response, feedbacks response, right? The second one, we'll talk about the second one. So the first one, we are creating a mapper configuration where we add in the profile using that feedbacks v1 profile, and then on that mapper configuration we're actually creating the map, and then we are using this using statement. Do you see this using statement? Please note this using statement. I'll come back to it because this line of code might not be necessary, but I'll talk about that. So the using statement, the reason why this code is wrapped up inside the using block or using statement, this using block statement, if you will, it's because it has its own built-in garbage collection system. Okay, so we are now getting the instance of this application DB context, and we're gonna say, now this is how I program, this is the correct way. But let's talk about this guy. We're saying, listen, application DB context, we need access to feedbacks. Now we're providing the condition where all of the feedbacks whose flag for show property show public is true, only those ones. And then we're gonna order them, by descending, meaning that the last one should be the top one, should be the first one, using the create on property to list. And then it's asynchronous. And then, like I said, the reason why I said that I'm having this underscore list, because I need to know that there's a list without having to scroll horizontal to, it's to list, right? And then from there, we're gonna now use a for each to loop inside the list. And then this item is a source when it comes to AutoMapper. So we're saying this is the source and this is the destination, and then we are mapping that. And then once we do that, after we've done that, we are adding to that list. And then if this list is null, then that's when our for gets to be triggered and we didn't find it. Other than that, we return to 200 status code with the list of all those feedbacks. And that's the best way of writing the endpoint. Every single variable makes sense when you read it. It's clean. Right, we are done with this one. The second one, quickly, we have comments for Swagger. That's where we get to add one feedback from the user to the system. First we pull them, and now we are adding them. And then if everything went well, we're gonna say yes, we have it successfully. If we could not, that means we're gonna return a better request. 400 status code, unable to add one feedback from the user due to validation errors. So there's a validation errors. So instead of HTTP GET, we are using HTTP POST. The route is still gonna go to that API route v1 feedbacks. So one more time. Now we're gonna focus on post one feedback. It has a base, the version number, and then this is the URI for the endpoint. Post one feedback, right? We are done with this class. We won't need it again. And then from there, it's public. It's being exposed publicly, and then it takes in this object, which is the request, not the response, but the request. So let's look at the request quickly. Now the requests are marked as required using the required attribute. We need the title, we need the message, we need the user to tell us the rating, and then automatically we get the user if it's not anonymous. So all of these are coming from the mobile application, and soon, in fact, I did code that for desktop application. Yes, I did. And also desktop application, which is WPF. But this class is marked with a validator attribute. Going to that, the post one feedback requires validator one. So let's go and look at that validators v1 general post one feedback. We're almost done. Visual Studio is still working like like a little child, which is good. Right, don't mind me. Okay, so post one feedback requires a validator. Again, best practice for fluent validation, append validator at the end of the class name, or well, towards the end of the class name, because I have also appended v1, and inherits from abstract validator, which is the base class for all object validators coming from fluent validation. Bring in that request object. So we only need the constructor, and then we need the rules for this for these properties out of this object or this request. For title, we are saying the length should be minimum 10 characters to 20. There's a reason why. Apparently, I'll talk about this when I get to Xamarin, when we do a extensive video on feedbacks. With the message, I'll show the message in a second. And then for the rating, it should be greater than 0 and then less than 6, meaning that from value of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And then for the message, the length should be, the minimum should be 5 characters, 200 characters max. Now going to global variables for those messages, closing this guy, going to help us, web API, global variables. We want to focus on feedbacks. Like I like to group my stuff nicely done. So for the title, if there's an error, we're going to say the title length should be 10 to 20 characters. The rating length should be 1 to 5 characters. Although we are using the stars on the mobile application, I can't wait to show that. The message length should be 5 to 100 characters. So this is how precise I am. So we are done with the validator, and then we are done with the request. Now going back to this endpoint. So this condition, please note this condition where we are checking if not the model state is valid. We're going to return that 400-bit request, mean that we are expecting whatever that's been marked as attribute required. Also on top of that, the validators assigned on this request object. And then also we're going to use the mapper configuration to bring in the profile, which is this feedbacks profile. This time we are creating a map from the source, which is what's coming in from the mobile application or desktop, to the database. Okay, now we are done with this guy, and that's exactly what we do here. And what we're gonna say, listen, what comes in, it's a source to the destination, which is the entity data model class. And then we are mapping everything to this variable, and that's where we get to use application db context feedbacks.add, and then we're gonna do try and catch block, which is interesting. Now when we try, we're gonna try to save the changes asynchronously because everything's happening on the network. If there are any issues, db update exception, and then if the feedback already exists, this is wrong because I'm using GoIt. So this method, it doesn't make sense because I'm using GoIt. What are the chances that it's gonna be the same? If the feedback exists, it doesn't make sense. Feedback exists, application db context, go to feedbacks table, count, is this guy that we have the same as what comes in? Yes. Now the chances of this thing, I need to remove this. This is not necessary. I need to remove. Hence I said this then class is not necessary. This class. No, it is necessary. Sorry, it is necessary because we are using it here. Okay. Sorry. Also, we need to use this dispose method, overriding this dispose method to do garbage collection. Okay. So, and then if that's the case, we're going to use a conflict, which is a 409, and then throw. By throw, we need to have something very descriptive. And by the way, soon I'm going to do extensive series, but I'm going to code it first of the logger because I need to know what's happening. If this guy gets to be thrown, we need to know. If this guy gets to be thrown, we need to know. Whatever it is. Okay, so I'm done with .NET Framework. Let's go quickly to .NET Core. We're not going to spend much time there. I only want to show the difference. So we need the controller, v1, general, feedbacks. I'm not going to go anywhere else except there's something unique I need to show. So this one is using dependency injection system because this is .NET Core project, right? So we are introduced now with this iFeedbacks service v1. So we need to go to services, v1, general, feedbacks, iFeedbacks service, the interface. So the very first method it's of type task, or it has a task of a list of the response. It's the same class, just that it lives now in .NET Core. I'm not going to show that it's the same class. And the name of the method get all feedbacks. The second one, we're going to post one feedback using the same request object, the same one. It's just that it lives in this namespace in this project. That's it. And the implementation of this feedback service is that after we have implemented, we have now to implement the methods, and that comes from there. Just two methods, these two guys. Also, like I'm using comments to guide the user. Now we're gonna need an instance of application db context. This time we're not instantiating the object. We're gonna need an instance of imapper, for automapper, and then we're gonna use the constructor to inject these two guys, application db context and imapper. We are injecting them. This is constructor injector using paste injection system. And then these methods, like I said, we are returning a list of this response, and then it's asynchronous. So this side, it's pretty much the same thing. Nothing is different. The condition still is there using the where clause. We're still using the order by descending, using the property created on. It still is a list, and the name of the variable is still the same, where we are still looping. After looping, we're still using the automapper from the source to the destination, and then we are adding those feedbacks into a list, and then we are returning it. We are done. And then finally, for having to post one, whatever that comes in instantly, we are taking it through the process of automapper. There's a source and this will be the destination, and then this object then gets to be added into feedbacks using application DB context, and then we're going to save the changes and automatically save the changes asynchronously. Now finally, how do we register these services? This is where dependency injection system comes in. Please watch this video. We're going to use the installers. So let's go to installers, db installer. Let's give it a second because I don't want to make Visual Studio mad. So the way we now register them, here it is: services add scoped, feedback system, feedback service v1, and give us the implementation of it. And then now finally, let me close this, guys, is that we're gonna now use this feedbacks to write via the constructor to be injected. And then the only difference is that, like I said, this is the same, and then if this is the same, this is different. How the new call now, give us everything about the response type. Instead of saying response type, they have rewritten this to be produces this kind of response type, of which it's 404 of type void. You see, this is correct. If we found something, we're going to return 200, a list of responses. There we go. And then we're doing the same thing where we're asking, listen, just go and get us all the feedbacks, put them here. If we could not find anything, return 404. Other than that, return a list of all of them. When we add, we're still gonna produce response type of error response model and void. And then when we post, we're gonna get what comes in, and then we're gonna send it through this guy into this method. And then if everything went well, we're gonna return okay. But this I don't like, because if there's an issue, we need to return appropriate method or something, but not just leave it like this. This is all I had to show for feedbacks, and then I hope you found this video informative. As I did, I identified some issues that I intend to fix, and then wait until I show how they get to be written here, because I don't get to add. As you can see, I can only go and show a compliment. This is from my friend Lone Star, and then it was added on the 5th of October 2020, 8:54 a.m. and this is true. Yes, you can see this, and the rating is 4. So I have only access to this, but I cannot add them as administrator. I hope that makes sense. With that being said, thank you very much. I hope this video was everything that you needed, to understand certain things about the web API, particularly in ASP.NET core and framework environment. With that being said,